Chase Merlin, leads product at Brale. Brale is a stablecoin issuance and orchestration platform that has helped 25 plus businesses and protocols issue their own stablecoins to power payments and consumer experiences on chain. So with that, I'll hand it to Chase.
Awesome. Thanks, Tanner. In this demo, we're going to issue a private stablecoin on Canton live. So we're here in the Brale dashboard. This is fully production. So all real assets, all real money flows here. So we can see a number of stablecoins, that have been issued by partners in the past. And for folks who are here in the last day zero, we issued day $0 live on Base and Solana. So this is a regulated fiat-backed stablecoin issued by Brale with reserves managed by Brale. We can see we have a balance on Base and there's some supply out on Solana. And so what we're going to do in this demo is leverage Brale issuance to extend day $0 into a private version on Canton. And so Brale issuance empowers businesses, protocols, and communities to issue their own fiat-backed stablecoins with reserves managed by Brale. And these have integrated on and off ramps, treasury revenue share, and reporting. And so we already have our branding and our logo for day zero. And so now we're going to issue this in a private form on Canton. We're going to mint this directly to our party ID. This is essentially a custodial wallet at Brale. And so there's no need to run your own validator or any other infrastructure here. This is all spun up in the background by Brale. So now we're going to fund DZUSD. We can fund this with USD or with stablecoins. And in this case, I'm just going to fund this with USDC on Solana. All right, and so let's kick it off now. And so under the hood here, Brale's receiving the USDC into reserves. We're sweeping this into T-bills, and then we'll mint day $0 on Canton. So using the Canton API to configure the instrument and then mint that's on chain. And so this will take a little bit to complete here. And so what I think is really unique about this is Canton as a public permissioned network is really one of the only environments in the world where we can issue these assets privately, right? Where these are not anonymous, but these are selective private control where they're still composable and interoperable. So here we can see Brale received the USD and now we've minted this on Canton. And I'm just going to refresh to speed this up a little bit. Awesome. And so we can see that, we're now holding essentially this $100 of private balance on Canton. And so what's really cool about this is that not only is this available to us, but this is immediately available to any business with a Brale account. And so through the same funding methods that we were just showing before, really, this is essentially an immediate, exchange listing where any business now can fund this with traditional payment methods, wire transfer, ACH, or USDC or Paxos issued assets. And so we're really excited to participate in Canton as an on-ramp here to make it as easy as possible to bring liquidity onto the network, not just from off-chain assets, but also from stablecoins on 15 other blockchains. And so now it's been a couple minutes, right? We have this private balance. And so we can start to think about some of the flows that we can support with this. And so I just want to pause here just really briefly and, share a little bit more about Canton and why we're so excited about it. I know a number of folks on the call are familiar with Canton, but for those who aren't, right, Canton's been building really for 5+ years with this foundational assumption that privacy is really like the key enabler for traditional finance and real world businesses. And so if we think about flows like market makers depositing collateral to a derivatives exchange or these sensitive money flows like payroll or supplier payments, these are things that are all really challenged on most networks today. And, in the past, this would have been solved with private permission chains, but Canton really takes a best of both worlds approach where you can now essentially operate these private subnets with their own governance, where they can synchronize with each other close to real time, where everything is composable and interoperable. And so I personally really love this kind of terminology around public permission networks. And so like as a simple example here, we'll just do a private transfer. And so this is a party ID from another Brale user. So the settlement account here. And so we'll do essentially a simple private settlement here. So that's kicked off. And so under the hood, we're sending a transfer offer to the other party ID. And since in this case, this is another account at Brale, we can automatically accept that. And we can see that, that completed right within a few seconds. So we still see the supply, out there, but the balance has been deducted for our wallet. So, this is really quick. This looks really simple, but I think this is really exciting. As you start to add directories and more complicated flows on top, this is really completely private payment flow here. And so now we have this essentially multi-chain stablecoin, right? That's both public, lives on Base, Solana, and a private version on Canton. And I think it's worth calling out that we can also swap back to these other chains at any time. And so in this case, we'll just swap some of this supply right back to Solana. And so the way we often imagine this being used is I'm holding a private balance on Canton, transacting, but let's say that I need to access liquidity back on Solana or Base or Ethereum or what have you, or let's say like in a payments context, the last mile provider, assumes the stablecoin right back on a public network. So we've burned Canton coin here. These assets are all issued natively. So we've burned on Canton and we're now minting the SPL token back on Solana. And all these chains are quite fast these days. And so you can almost move really back and forth in a just-in-time basis. And so I'll give this kind of a few seconds to complete here, but I think in maybe a little more than 5 minutes, right? We've essentially issued day zero as a private stablecoin live. We showed on-ramping, we showed a private transfer, and then the ability to swap back to public chains at any time. And so we essentially have a regulated multi-chain stablecoin. It's both hybrid, private, and public, with reserves managed by Brale, where of course the treasury is shared back with partners each month with configured on and off ramps for transparency and reporting. And so we can see here, right, the mint on Solana, or mint back on Solana completed there. So we can move back and forth at any time.